All right, guys. So once again, I got to give Kevin McCarthy some credit, okay? Even though he's still a snake, right? He's still a weasel. You know, you got to get credit where credit is due, okay? Just because I don't personally like the guy doesn't necessarily mean he's not doing a good job, when it comes to some things, okay? And you got to get credit where credit is due. And in this interview right here with Margaret Brennen on Face the Nation, Kevin McCarthy actually does a pretty decent job of setting her straight on the hypocrisy of the Democrats when it comes to election denialism. Not just the hypocrisy of the Democrats, but the hypocrisy of the mainstream liberal media on this subject as well, too. And the fact that they refuse to call out the Democrats on their election denialism, but every single time a Republican is on a liberal media network to talk about, the election or whatever, they're always going hard on Republicans for election denialism, but they have no smoke for the Democrats, who are the OG original election deniers. And I think that Kevin McCarthy did a great job of, again, kind of setting this reporter straight on the hypocrisy from the Democrats in the liberal media. Take a look.
I want to ask you about some of the makeup of your caucus. According to CBS records, 70% of the House GOP members denied the results of the 2020 election. You put many of them on very key committees: intelligence, homeland security, oversight. Why are you elevating people who are denying reality like that?
Well, if you look to the Democrats, their ranking member Raskin had the same thing, denied Trump or Bush was in there. Benny Thompson,
did you see those numbers that we just put up there? 70%.
Did you also be fair and equal where you looked at Raskin did the same thing? Benny Thompson, who's a ranking member and was the chair. These individuals were chair of the Democratic Party.
I'm asking you, as leader of Kevin McCarthy's House, why you made these choices. These were your choices.
Yeah, they're my choices, but they're the conference choices. But I'm also asking you, when you look to see just Republicans, Democrats have done the same thing. So maybe it's not denying. Maybe it's the only opportunity they have to have a question about what went on during the election. So if you want to hold Republicans to that equation, why don't you also hold Democrats? Why don't you hold Jamie Raskin? Why don't you hold Benny Thompson when Democrats had appointed them to be chair? I never once heard you ask Nancy Pelosi or any Democrat that question when they were in power in the majority. When they questioned...
You're talking about things going back to 2000, which was a time when I didn't have this show back then, which is why I'm asking you now about your leadership.
They were in power last Congress. So why...
But you're talking about questions from 2000
But you're asking me about questions that happened to another Congress. You're asking about questions for another Congress. So the only thing I'm simply talking... These are members who just got elected by their constituents, and we put them into committees, and I'm proud to do it.
Yes, I can't lie to you guys. Kevin McCarthy has been on fire lately, okay? I'm not sure if you guys remember that Q&A that he did with a reporter when the reporter was questioning him about, removing Eric Swalwell, Ilhan Omar, and Adam Schiff from committees, how he set that reporter straight. Again, he seems to have watched my video where I went off on Republicans for being so soft with the media, okay? He seems to have watched that video and took some of my suggestions in regards to how to handle the media, because he did exactly what I suggested, which is just turn it back around on them, right? Because that's what Democrats do every single time they're confronted by the media on anything. They just turn it right back around on Republicans. They just say, well, Republicans, blah, 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 blah. Right? Republicans do the same thing to Democrats. Well, Democrats, blah, 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 blah. And in this case right here, Kevin McCarthy's actually right? He's 100% in the right. It's not just whataboutism just for whataboutism. It's whataboutism because the hypocrisy from the liberal media and the Democrats is stunning, right? We've talked about this time and time again. Liberal media journalists like Martha Brennan, they will never confront the Democrats about the Democrats' election denialism, but they'll make a huge deal about it when it comes to Republicans. She's sitting up here asking Kevin McCarthy about his choices in regards to leaderships and these committees based off actions that these congressmen did in the last Congress, right? Something that it happened, more than 2 years ago? Okay, these congressmen did something that they're constitutionally allowed to do. They said, hey, I have questions about the election. I am going to basically, oppose or, question the election results, which, again, they're allowed to do. Again, for whatever reason, Martha Brennan thinks that, oh, well, these people are just not supposed to be a part of leadership at all because they're election deniers. But yet, she didn't have any problem with Democrats putting election deniers in leadership. Like, for example, Jamie Raskin, who contested the election in 2016. He contested the election of Donald J. Trump.
Right. I have an objection because 10 of the 29 electoral votes cast by Florida were cast by electors not lawfully certified because they violated Florida's
And this guy was on the leadership committee for, what, January 6th, right? The January 6th commission. He was on the January 6th commission. He's been basically a leading voice against so-called election denialism, right, for the Democrats. And she's done plenty of interviews with Jamie Raskins. In fact, she did a very recent interview with Jamie Raskins on Christmas, right, around Christmas time, in which she didn't mention anything about Jamie Raskins and his history of election denialism while also being on the January 6th committee. In fact, she gave a very softball interview in which it seemed more like she was kissing ass than actually trying to be adversarial towards Jamie Raskins and hold him accountable for essentially doing the same things that he's complaining about so much. Take a look.
I want to follow up on what you just said, which is sort of a dress rehearsal for a coup. Congress is putting millions of dollars towards bolstering security for members of the House, for members of the Senate when they are home, and for those who were involved in the prosecution of those who carried out January 6th. Are you fearful of your own security? I mean, what does this say about where we are now, this far after January 6th?
There's very dangerous rhetoric going on out there that's a real break from everything we've known in our lifetimes. What it means to live in a democracy with basic civic respect is that people can disagree without resorting to violence. But the internet has played a negative role, especially for the right wing, the extreme right, which now engages in very dangerous hyperbolic rhetoric that exposes people to danger. But democracy also requires courage. I'm so impressed by the elected officials around the country who have stood up against all of the threats and all of the intimidation. And those people don't get enough credit.
We agree. Congressman, thank you for your time.
Jamie, I agree. I love the Democrat D, right? The D in Democrat. I love it. Yeah. No pushback whatsoever. Zero pushback whatsoever. Again, coming from a guy who straight up denied the 2016 election, leading a commission that is supposed to be against election denialism. Why have you not asked him about that? How do you not ask him about how can you be on a committee like that when you have a history of election denialism? But see, Martha Brennan, she would only be interested in doing that if she was actually interested in being a real journalist instead of a Democrat propagandist, right? Which she is. Okay, she also had Hakeem Jeffries on her show plenty of times, who is the leader of the Democrat Party now, right, in the House, and she never asked him about election denialism, right? She never asked him one time about, you know, his denial of the 2016 election, right? The fact that he came out and said that, you know, the 2016 election was stolen from Hillary by Russia, right? Stolen by Trump and Russia. Never asked him about it, even though we know that that's just false, right? That is objectively false. Never asked him about it. They don't seem to care about election denialism unless they have Republicans on the show. And see, the thing is, I used to be more critical of Republicans who didn't go on these mainstream liberal networks like CNN and MSNBC, because I thoroughly believe that you need to meet your opponents, right? You need to actually engage with your opponents if you actually want to, you know, change people's minds and stuff. And I think that Republicans should try to go more on these liberal media shows, right? But, you know, just seeing the difference between how the liberal media treats Republicans versus Democrats, I understand why they don't do it, right? Because it's like a losing effort, because the mainstream liberal media, they're going to bring out all the guns when it comes to holding Republicans accountable, right? But when it comes to Democrats, it's going to be a softball. So it's like, what's the point of going on these platforms that are going to not treat me equally or fairly compared to the opposition? Right? They're in bed with Democrats. So again, Democrats can get softballs. They're never going to question Democrats about things that they claim are so dangerous to this country, right? So dangerous to democracy. They'll never question Democrats about their role in that stuff, right? They'll never question Democrats about their role in the BLM riots, the Roe v. Wade riots, and Antifa riots. They'll never question Democrats about that stuff, right? But they'll go on and on and on all day about January 6th, about election denialism, white supremacy and this, that, and the other when it comes to Republicans. So again, I get it. I understand why Republicans don't like going on these shows because, again, it's not fair and balanced. And this is the problem with the mainstream liberal media. I don't have an issue with the media being adversarial towards Republicans. But I just want you to give that same smoke to the Democrats. Again, if you claim that you're fair and balanced, you're nonpartisan, right? You're non-biased. Okay, if that's the case, then just get the same smoke to both parties. There's no reason why Martha Brennan should not have asked Jamie Ratkins about election denialism and his role in that in 2016 when she interviewed him. She should have asked him at least once. It's not like she didn't know. She knows. But again, they're not interested in calling out the Democrats on the hypocrisy. They're not interested in questioning or pressing the Democrats on anything that might make them look bad or, again, might expose their hypocrisy, expose how unserious the conversation is around so-called election denialism. Again, it's just fascinating to see the difference between how, again, these mainstream liberal journalists who claim to be nonpartisan and non-biased, how they treat Republicans versus Democrats. So, again, kudos to Kevin McCarthy. He actually did a decent job here. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.